What is up, my good people? In this video, I'm going to talk to you about what is really the role of a product designer. A lot of people get confused because there's UX designer, there's UI designer, there's digital designer, there's product designer. It's so confusing, I understand, but this is the world that we live in. And that's why I'm here to try and explain that to you, and hopefully it's helpful. Before we get into that, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, subscribe, and also hit that notification button if you like these videos. So first thing, let's have a look at what are really the general things that the product designer is required to do. And this will be quite broad, but I'll get into the details and the specifics after this. So the 4 points that I've got here is a product designer needs to understand the customers. It is so essential to do that. The second one is recognize the business needs. So it needs to be balanced as well. It's not all about the customers, but you need to innovate within the intersection of what the business requires and its customers. And the third one is to translate requirements into design, whether that's user experience or visual. Then the fourth one is this person is skilled at user research and validation for them to be able to gather feedback and describe what the next action should be. So if we look at those things, product designers are really problem solvers who understand UX, UI, and design systems. So UX meaning user experience, UI, user interaction or user interface, and design systems, which I'll explain a little bit further. First of all, let's try and understand very, very briefly what is UX. UX is user experience, which means this product designer who knows UX would be concerned about how the users feel when they're interacting with your product. What do they feel when they're using this interface, when they're using this feature? What's the feedback that they get out of it? And what could be improved in terms of general user behavior that it would affect certain things like conversions or any type of other metrics that businesses would want to look at. So user experience designer are mostly concerned about this. That's why they do a lot of research and trying to understand and trying to study what the users does. The next thing is UI. What about it? So UI is more focused on visuals. We're talking about user interaction or user interface. So if you're imagining a mobile app, a UI designer would be concerned about how it looks, the colors, how it affects user experience as well is another important thought that a UI designer would look into. So even like the colors of the buttons, the shape of the buttons, is it too big, too small, are text too hard to read, all sorts of visual stuff like that. So it's not really about aesthetics only. People often think that UI designer only focuses on visual design and aesthetics, but not really. In addition to that, it is a lot more meaningful when user interface designers actually thinks about the experience aspect of it. Hopefully I'm not confusing you, but UX and UI can be quite confusing sometimes, and that's why people would say UX/UI designer, because they tend to do the same thing, or at least they need to be concerned about one another. And what about design systems? Man, like design systems is another whole different world where you're thinking about the libraries, the patterns of your products. So think about a style guide. Think about, in the traditional sense, a brand style guide where you have, like how logos are being placed, what are the negative space around it, what type of photography would you use, all of that stuff. But design systems is almost that same thing, but devised in a more advanced manner where it can be used on different products from the same brand, and it just communicates different patterns and libraries that other people can use. So when you have a brand that has a good design system, let's say the ones that I can think on top of my head are people like Uber, for example, or I think Spotify has it as well, Slack. But these type of companies would have different products and different projects and different teams working on different projects, that a design systems becomes even more important. So a good product designer would understand design systems and how to use it, or how to devise a design system, and therefore their work and their team's work is going to be a lot more efficient down the track. So just very quickly, what does a product designer really do on a daily basis? Well, a day in the life of a product designer would be working on ideas and trying to understand users, trying to understand business needs. This involves design thinking methods oftentimes. An example would be coming up with a user journey map or coming up with product design storyboards, generally in a user interface flow or user flow. It can be in many ways, but yeah, understanding user flows, interaction flows, things like that would be a typical product designer job. A product designer would be working on wireframes as well before getting into any visual work, but then a product designer might devise a couple of different versions of wireframes, low fidelity ones, and be able to study that and understand what brings the most value, then move forward with it. And another huge job of a product designer is obviously prototyping itself. So from those wireframes, how do they translate that into a good finished product? And that involves UX, UI skills, and of course, design system skills. A good prototype or a good design piece, a finished product design file, would be one that uses a good design system library and is reusable when they want to create iterations and is efficient for development team or technical teams to use at the same time. So those are like typical jobs that product designers would do. In addition to that, obviously, once the prototype is out, they'll be doing some user testing sessions, compile it, and present it back to the business and provide some solutions or recommendations to the problems. So as you can see, product design can mean so many things. It depends on what scale of a company we're talking about. The bigger the company, like if we think about the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, there are very specified roles in there. There are UX researchers. There are even UX writers that all they do is writing in a UX mind instead of doing the whole thing. But in the small startup world, the product designer, the UX designer, they're all really merged into just the one person. So you might have a designer who is a product designer. Yes, you can call him or her a UX designer, a UI designer, or whatever, but they're just a designer, but they cover all sorts of things. But what that means is this person would focus less than that UX writer that we talk about in Google. So there's no right or wrong, but in general, a product designer would cover all of these aspects that they're actually skilled in all of this. That's it, guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you to understand. If you have any questions or any burning inquiries that has not been answered in this video, feel free to send me a message. Leave us a comment as well. Don't forget to like, because I really appreciate that. And subscribe as well if you haven't done so. If you enjoy this videos, please share it with your friends and colleagues who might benefit from it. All right, guys, have a good one.